amazing things. I think there are like 150 posts today. We have completed a survey of all the provosts and actually gotten them to respond in a 2-week time frame. So I think we should declare victory and stop right there. Maybe analyze the results, but then stop. No, we're engaged in a number of things. And the thing I want to say about online learning, I think it's very important that we have the diverse viewpoints that are represented up here, and then will be represented by the audience, is that I don't think you should do it unless you really want to do it and you have a good reason for doing it. And I think there are lots of good reasons for doing it. And I could get very digressive and chew up a lot of time talking about some of the ones I discovered back when I was PIA for the Sloan grants, and we had fairy dust to spread around the university to engender a lot of this stuff. So I recognize some people who remember the good old days of CUNY Online circa turn of the century. But for me, the great reason now is not classic distance education. Now, some of the reasons that we're doing that are, in fact, sort of second-generation classic distance education. Judith Cahn is here representing John Jay Online. If you know about their 2 new degrees, you know that John Jay has a very good reason for wanting to, a mission-fit reason, for wanting to get some of that stuff they do here out to the rest of the world, to go global with it. And that's fine. And very important, and makes a lot of sense in certain places. But I'm trying to speak now about CUNY generally. And for me, the great reason to engage in this project, and for sort of everybody to get on board, for there to be no reason why any campus wouldn't be engaged in this, has to do with the completion agenda. Getting students to the finish line. And I want you to think for a moment about what it would mean. Some people may know that if you start registering in CUNY first, it may even be going on now. Annamarie would know. But your students will find a pop-up box. You've only registered for 9 credits. You could register for up to 15, or you can register for another course at no more cost. There's a slogan that's being circulated at some campuses: "Finish in 4." If you're going to finish in 4 and you're not doing summer and winter session, which are also good ideas, by the way, and other places you can do online, you need to do 15 credits a term. A study by 2 people, Morris Mail at City Tech and Mariano Regalado at Brooklyn, determined that the average student spends up to an hour commuting one way each day that they come to CUNY. So all of our students commute. Most of them work. Most of them have very complicated lives. We talk about this all the time. Think about the difference it would make if that 3rd or 4th or 5th course that they take would be an online course. It would not require any commuting. It would be guaranteed to fit whatever their schedule was because it was asynchronous. I think nothing is more important than the retention and completion agenda. And that is one of the things that online can speak to. So implementing. Focusing more on online because so is the Chancellor, and he's the Chancellor. But it would make an enormous difference, it seems to me. And I have a lot to do with the idea that CUNY would be a university, a multiversity, an integrated system with cross-campus enrollments, as opposed to really the way things are now, a loosely federated group of people who can come together just by getting on the subway or bus for events like this. So that, for me, is the big reason to do this, and the one thing I want to say about it. Now I'm going to pass the mic down, whoever wants to go next. Judy. Okay.
Hi, I'm Judy Cahn. I'm director of John Jay Online. And John Jay Online focuses, is really the extension of John Jay College, offering specific programs online. We are not working with, right now we're not working with undergraduate departments for specific, for individual online courses. we really are focusing on, only focusing on programs. But I wanted to add perhaps a more, I guess, ideological perspective as well. When you're dealing with students, especially students of this generation today who are in college, we want to engage them. And we want to engage them in environments that they are familiar with. And online is something that they do and use every single day. And pedagogically speaking, online can promote and foster better learning in many ways because you can't hide online like you can sometimes hide in the classroom. So I think the disruptive innovation that we talk about related to technology in higher education is not the technology itself, but rather the dialogue, the discussion about teaching and learning. So I think, perhaps it sounds somewhat ideological, but I'm really convinced that with the responsibility of the learning returning to the learner, the online learner, and that shift from the professor to the learner is really can really help engage students. And we have an instructional design team at John Jay Online who really works with faculty to promote that.
Who's next?
I'm Luke Walser. I'm the director of the Teaching and Learning Center at the CUNY Graduate Center. And before that, I was the director of the CTL at Baruch College. At Baruch, I started working with faculty colleagues and staff colleagues to think about what the college's hybrid strategy should be. And some folks may have gone to the team's presentation this morning where they talked about a series of seminars that are run every semester that help faculty think through what it means to teach in a hybrid space. Now at the CUNY Graduate Center, my job is to prepare graduate students for their college teaching experience, not necessarily in a hybrid space, but including a hybrid space and an online space. Across both of these experiences, the real opportunity for me, I think, is in trying to eliminate some of the separation that we think about between the pedagogy that happens in face-to-face classrooms and what happens in hybrid classrooms, and making sure that our faculty members and the graduate students that we're training are engaged in pedagogically, broadly speaking. For graduate students, that means that they will be prepared for a range of jobs and a range of careers, and for them not to just think about online and hybrid teaching as a specialty, but as something that's integrated into their tool set. As an academic and a scholar myself, I'm deeply invested in the conversations that lead to the development and launch of these courses. The opportunity to talk and think about pedagogy and context-aware pedagogy, and helping faculty and graduate students think about what it means to teach at a place like CUNY, and what it means to teach at a place like Hostos versus Baruch or BMCC or John Jay, and what are the similarities, what are the differences, what are the tools that you can use in these places. These are invigorating conversations, and all of our curriculum should be infused with those conversations. So that kind of strategy, ideology, has kind of bridged the work that I've done in this space, both at Baruch and now at the graduate school.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Sparrow, and I'm the Academic Director for General Education at the CUNY School of Professional Studies. So in my job, I have oversight for all of the different general education courses, math to science to history to composition, that support our bachelor's degrees. And hearing George talk about CUNY Online, I was thinking about how I came to have this position. I was an English professor at Medgar whenever the first iteration of CUNY Online came out, and I applied to that, and so I really got into online education just because I was interested in it, and I liked it, and I wanted to try new things and kind of experiment, and I luckily had a very cooperative intro to lit course who kind of let me pilot things on them as I went along. And so when I finished that course, I had what I thought was a nice introduction to literature course. And then a few years later, I ended up teaching part-time for what was the CUNY School of Professional Studies and teaching basically the same course. And then another instructor was brought on to come teach in the program, to teach the same intro to lit course that I developed. And so we just kind of cloned the course and gave it to her, and she tried to teach it, and it was really a disaster, because she didn't know what I was thinking. She didn't know how the course was set up. It was very, very, very challenging for her to take what I had built and to work with it in any kind of effective way. And I just tell that story because that's what I'm really kind of, what's on my mind right now as far as online education at CUNY is how to go from a sort of single professor, I want to try this, I want to innovate, I like to do new things, how to go from a single professor, single course model to something where perhaps, I went to the Gen Chem presentation this morning, but where there are a team of people all working together on a single course, and you're ending up with something that can be used across an institution for high enrollment courses, or even perhaps across multiple institutions for high enrollment courses. I feel like, personally, in my program, and I think around CUNY, we have a lot of people trying to do the same thing at once and doing it in semi-isolation, and we might do better if we tried to come together and work on these things, especially in the courses that have such big enrollments. So.
Hi, my name is Angela Francis, and I am the Assistant Director of General Education at the CUNY School of Professional Studies. And my interest, do I have to put it up here? Can you hear me better? So I'm Angela Francis. I am Jennifer's Assistant Director. I am interested in online education in part because I've been at CUNY at various campuses since 2002, starting when I was an undergraduate student and then moving to being a graduate student, an adjunct instructor, various types of part-time work, and now in this position. And in each of those cases, I noticed that there was a sense of isolation for a lot of the people who were in those roles. So for example, graduate students didn't always have a connection to undergraduate students. Faculty didn't always have a connection to other faculty or to graduate students or undergraduate students, especially if they were in different campuses. And so I am interested in the way that we can use online education as a way to bridge some of those gaps, both across campuses, but also sometimes within one campus. And also the way that we can do what Jennifer was just talking about, and if you have multiple faculty at multiple campuses or at one campus, figure out how to have them collaborate or start from the same role rather than reinventing the wheel each time they teach a course.
I just want to say one thing, and I can shout, I don't need the mic. Angela, before she became the assistant director for Jennifer, presided over an online orientation for students, which I think is wonderful. And one of the reasons it's wonderful is it was supported by a student success grant, which is to say it was adequately funded, but it was also very, very well facilitated. And one of the things I think people are going to have questions about is how you support faculty and how you support students in moving into new spaces.
And can I just say, I did that from Ohio.
That's
so
true.
Talk about like isolation, I was in Ohio. So one other way that online education can bridge gaps is you can do it from Ohio.
My name is James Richardson. I'm the Academic Director for the Communication and Media Program at the School of Professional Studies, as well as an Associate Professor of New Media at LaGuardia Community College. I consider myself always more of a technologist more than anything else, and I've always been a huge fan of disruptive technologies that basically overturn or upset the status quo. And for me, online education was an opportunity to a large extent, basically be able to bring education to many disaffected populations, to also as a means to basically bring the cost down and the convenience for a lot of our students. I started at LaGuardia working with community college students, many who have extremely complicated lives, who have family responsibilities, and numerous things that most of us would kind of take for granted, that make it very difficult for them to study. The disruptive nature of online education can help, to a large extent, make the process of education very much more convenient for these students who now might not have to travel a couple of hours to class, or who may have issues with child care, or who may work jobs that don't allow them the flexibility to get to a class at a specific time. So for me, as kind of a militant, disruptive person, I do love the fact that this technology can totally revamp the way that we look at higher education and help some of the more vulnerable people within our society learn, improve themselves, and improve their overall lifestyle.
I'm Ekaterina Zuhanova, and I'm an Associate Dean at the Office of Academic Affairs at the Central Office. And a big part of my portfolio is reviewing new program proposals and program changes to all curricular matters. And as I think about, what's in it for CUNY and where we want to move next, I sort of see the dynamic between two issues that are important to me. One is the structure, and the other is faculty engagement. I see all the curricular proposals that come through all the campuses, but in the past, as concerned, online education in all of its different varieties, from fully online to hybrid and everything in between, we have sort of been reactive and just waited to see, what initiatives will spring up where, and just, joy in the fact that they developed. For example, John Jay was the first college after the School of Professional Studies to launch a fully online graduate program, and it was sort of a pleasant surprise. It was nice to know that they're in the avant-garde. But I think time has come to realize that we can no longer rely on individual faculty and individual courses. Jennifer Sparrow was saying before, we need a strategy that's system-wide. And I think the fact that there is a digital CUNY task force, convened, I think it's a realization of the fact that we have been sort of slow to come to this game as a system. And for example, the community colleges of Colorado system already offer a whole range of general education courses online. All the 13 campuses accept for credit. And they have agreed on the equivalencies. And it's a unit that doesn't award degrees, it just serves all of these campuses in the system. And, for us, we have not so far been able to come up with the system-wide approach. And I think it's our job as administrators to come up with a structure, with sort of a semiotic space, in the culture that will make it possible. But of course, it's not enough to have a structure. In order to fill it with something, you need to have content, and for that you need to have faculty engagement. And I think this, to me, it has been one of the major block in expanding online education at CUNY. Apart from all of our difficult political and technological and budgetary challenges, we always keep talking about how CUNY is unique, but maybe in this respect it's not so unique, because national data show that more than half of the faculty consider online courses inferior to face-to-face courses in many important aspects. This figure is going down. For about 10 years ago it was about 2/3. Now it's like a bit over half. And as faculty start teaching online themselves, that figure drops. And people who have experience teaching, they usually have more positive opinion of the learning outcomes of online courses. So to me that's an important conversation. How do we engage faculty who are already committed to teaching online and trying new things? How do we garner that energy and help bring more faculty on board? Because we need faculty to engage faculty. We cannot say that we cannot do it from the top down. So if anybody has examples of best practices in new CITL, new professional development initiatives, or anything that's happening in your campuses, we'd like to hear about that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Annamarie Bianco. I'm the University Registrar for CUNY. First, I guess, why would I be here, right? So most of the innovation that the faculty are doing with digital technology in courses and delivering online programs need to be administered, and how do we get students enrolled in those courses or into those programs. And so my job is to push the envelope in how we interpret the regulations that higher education traditionally looks at: course credits, credit hours, courses, programs, and see how we can best configure a system where students have easy access and are able to do this from anywhere. I think my colleague James, who talks about the disruptive nature of digital technology, is on point, but it's not just disruptive in how we deliver the knowledge and education. It's also disruptive in how we administer it and the regulations, those traditional regulations throughout government, and how we administer financial aid for credit hours. And so those are very challenging topics that, from a university-wide perspective, we have a responsibility to push the envelope and maybe look at the interpretation of those regulations a little bit differently and with new eyes. So, and to that extent, I'm fully supportive of an online education. I myself have taken some online courses in my master's program and at the doctoral level. They're more work, but definitely the only reason I took them was for travel time, and between working full-time and having a family, to be able to finish a master's degree. So I think our students will benefit immensely once we can get this right.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Guevara. I'm the Director of Educational Technology and the Center for Teaching and Learning at Hostos Community College. For us, it's somehow different how we approach to developing online courses and hybrid courses, just because of the nature of a community college and the level of students that we get, and also trying to address developmental needs. But it's been a really interesting experience for trying new things. Just coming back to what the keynote said earlier about trying new things, thinking differently, and making sure that we identify that vision of change. It's been very interesting in trying something didn't work, try again, until something seems to work, and that might work for a couple of years, and then you have to come back to what you started with before, and it didn't work at that time, and it might work now. So it's been very rewarding to see faculty trying, and I think my job in all these years that I've been in educational technology, it's been being that bridge between faculty language and faculty needs, to how you can connect with technology without having that being afraid of using the technology, and that anxiety that sometimes it's not about the technology, it's just making the first step to be able to then embrace hybrid or asynchronous or any other modality, or any technology for that matter. So I'm really happy that we are here, that we're having these conversations, and especially trying to identify what it will take us to be able to, what we have already tried, as the keynote said. Well, so let's celebrate failures. From failures, then we are able to then identify best practices, and from there we have 24 campuses. So we could try 24 times, and then we're sure there's going to be a few of those that we can learn from, and then take advantage of those and just work together to make sure that we go to the next level, connecting from the needs of administration, how administration can understand the resources that need to be there to be able to provide the support. We talk about faculty, we talk about students, what type of support we need to provide for students, for faculty, to be able to get to that level of providing the support of online students. We know that online students are not going to be just here in New York. We might be pushing anywhere. So how can we create that structure, that minimum level, to be able to succeed in creating and pushing to create more programs? Every campus has already done online work, online development. We've done programs. There have been campuses that have been ahead, that have done fully online programs. So everybody has those experiences. Now, how can we take from each of those spaces and then move it to the next level? And I think the work that we're doing with that survey, understanding where we are, that's a key element to then continue having those conversations and move to the next levels.
Hi, I'm Susan Coe, and I'm Faculty Development Director and head of the Office of Faculty Development and Instructional Technology at School of Professional Studies. Because when I was trying to think about what to talk about at this panel, I thought, given that we're talking about digital CUNY and things that we do together and things that we do separately, I'll talk a little bit about the program that I manage, which is the Preparation for Teaching Online workshop. And many of you are probably familiar with that. Some of you may have taken it. We have had faculty from over 20 of the colleges participate since 2011. We're now somewhere up to maybe 1,100 faculty who have completed the workshop. And the workshop has evolved somewhat over time. We're always adding to it. But it is something where we try to help the different colleges also fit this into each college's own structure and concerns about preparation that they may have. So we have some colleges that are pretty organized in terms of sending faculty to this workshop after they've had basic Blackboard training, or some have already had to apply to teach an online course and have had that online course syllabus accepted. So colleges have created different entry points, for this workshop. I myself facilitate the workshop a couple of times a year, and I have to say I really do love it, although it's a lot of work. One of the things that I have found so encouraging is the faculty who take this workshop, they struggle a little bit with how to find their own voice, how to find their own way of translating what's valuable to them in the way that they teach. Yes, they're also trying to learn new things. But I think it's very important when we think about frustrations with everybody doing their own thing and our people repeating. We have to also remember that really there's a lot of innovation that happens because of differences. Faculty have different perspectives. They, as they become more accustomed to an online an online environment and ways of communicating and activities and ways that they can do the kinds of things that are important to them in terms of learning activities, they come up with great ideas. And one of the most encouraging things about the workshop is that the sharing that happens between faculty in that workshop. And a very nice thing sometimes is you see people overcoming kind of isolation they may have. Maybe there aren't that many people in their discipline on their campus who are doing online courses. We try to organize it so that they will meet other people of the same discipline, whether it's the same college or not. And so you have these wonderful discussions among faculty in the workshop. So, I feel very encouraged about where we're going. I see a lot of creativity, and I do think that sometimes where we want to have everything streamlined and we worry about wasting energy, but the other side of it is that there's a lot of creativity out there, and I think it's important to remember how important faculty are to our students. They are really important to our students. And faculty have to feel intrinsic motivation to feel that the time they spend, extra time to learn to teach online, and the extra time to build their courses, that it is worthwhile. So I think that's something that's often overlooked. People who go into teaching are, yes, some of them care about release time or money or whatever. I'm not saying that those are important incentives, but there has to be an intrinsic motivation too. And so I I just don't want to forget how important faculty are to this whole endeavor.
Thank you, Susan. I'm very glad that we're probably right at the, especially because we began just a couple minutes after 1 o'clock. We're halfway through, and the other half is really for you to determine how it plays out, how it's used. If you want the mic, we'll get the mic to you. If you want to just shout out, do that. And those of you who know how well I know some of you may get called on if we don't have people who have hands going up. So let's hear from the audience. Yes.
So I'm concerned. I've been teaching online for quite a few years, and my biggest concern is about exams. So the integrity of the exams. And now I know I've had experience, and I know people who have taken distance courses. The students don't know each other. And the integrity issue is different. And maybe some students know one other student, but in our schools, I know all of them. So I would like somebody to help me out with best practices for exams for online classes.
I will say, as the chair group, a lot of the people here are from that group. The Committee on Academic Technology did the boilerplate, which is in circulation for the Middle States verification, identity verification issue. It's really a two-pronged approach, which is the argument that it's partly pedagogical and partly a security issue. There are a number of different approaches to the proctoring of exams online. How many people know about ProctorU, which is run by Pearson? It's sort of web surveillance, and biometrics and keystroke patterns and things like that. I'm not in love with that. I will say, because I was an English professor in another life, I'm not in love with exams. I believe that we're moving increasingly to project-based learning and demonstrations of learning, much more than exam-based. But there are ways of treating this, and one of the ways is that we have nationally right now, and it could get a lot broader than that, proctoring agreements with all major states, localities, cities where our students are. So you can do that consortially. People know about the randomization you can do and the other exam security issues that you can take advantage of on Blackboard. I just wanted to say that there are some general approaches to this already. Could you not hear me?
I think you don't need a microphone.
No, it's okay.
You do.
Okay. I could get a lot louder, but okay.
Actually, I was going to say that before you started. Just to back up a little bit, John Jay Online, I realize, is quite unique amongst CUNY because we, in essence, are a microcosm. We handle everything from enrollment, certainly with our admissions and registrar people at the college, but we do have people who are looking at recruitment and enrollment. So we're working with marketing and enrollment, and we're also working on a different calendar, academic calendar in a sense, because we have 8-week online courses. Now that has presented a challenge to the university because we have to have our students register for both 8-week 1 and 8-week 2 before 8-week 1, and there's only one add drop date, and that will impact financial aid. So we are kind of pushing the envelope by addressing these issues because we're coming at it first from a student perspective that's very different than has happened before at CUNY. So we're addressing a lot of these issues. But to get back to the issue about proctoring, I happen to agree, with George and the mindset. The mindset about exams.
What is it about
What's
that?
about?
When you have an asynchronous
So you're worried about
The
students?
integrity, the student validation, authentication of the student. Right, you're talking about the student, to make sure the student who is taking the exam is the student who is supposed to be. No?
Right, so I can take it at 8 o'clock, and my friend can take it at 10 o'clock, and between 8 and 10, I tell you questions.
Well, okay, so just in general, I mean, not to ignore the question, but a lot of it has to do with the approach, the design of the online course, where you do not necessarily have to have exams as an assessment. There are other forms of assessment and other ways to assess students other than exams. So I think that's what George was alluding to as well.
But that's my personal bent. I do want to say that there are ways of ensuring that students don't take the same exam.
Right.
We all are aware of the
Questions.
software for that,
Right.
right? It could be a separate conversation, but that does exist.
So, but George, that's funny because that exists in the physical classroom as well.
Right.
If I'm sitting next to someone and my eye can go this way, you have different forms of the same exam that has different questions, but yet the exam is essentially testing the same learning goals and outcomes.
That's the same thing.
And students will take pictures. I've heard students will
Well,
take a picture
but if the question is different on your exam from someone else's exam.
Somebody want to? I don't want to mention, and I don't want to get stuck on this either. But I don't want to mention vendors or stuff like that. But if you've used or some of these other things that exist, it's not like they don't exist. And if you don't know that they exist, you can. Yes, George.
No, I was gonna, does everybody hear me? I was gonna say, I think we reached a point where I know on Blackboard alone, there's more safeguards against cheating, in an online course than there are safeguards for, against cheating in a classroom. I teach. I give both online quizzes and give tests in class. I've taught hybrid class. I've taught classroom courses, and for me to prevent cheating. Let's see, on multiple choice tests, which is actually one of the worst causes of cheating, is the use of mainly multiple choice exams these days. I have all sorts of settings, multiple tests. Divide tests into secret groups where there's different tests for different groups and they don't know who's in the group, all those things. But in a classroom, I really have to work hard to prevent cheating there. I'm running around printing out multiple tests. I talk about putting cameras there. I joked about, maybe we should use drones to hover over the class. It's actually easier now to prevent cheating online than it is in the classroom.
And it really depends on the discipline that you're in. If you're working more on a project-based discipline, for me, as a digital media instructor, the projects that students turn in, if someone turns in something similar to another student from in the same class or even classes a couple of semesters behind, it's obviously evident. The way people code, the way people write, sentence structure, all of these things can be determined if the correct processes are put in place. Jennifer and I were a part of a panel group not too long ago on assessing online education. And, the challenges that people always say about online is, well, you worry about cheating. I'm telling you for a fact that in an online setting, it's a lot more difficult to cheat in certain aspects, especially when you're talking, if we're talking multiple choice questions, absolutely. But when you start talking about the way students write, there's certain patterns that can be pulled out, and other assessment tests, even multiple choice tests, like when you go for any of the technical certifications, like the Cisco certifications or the Microsoft certifications, there's a test bank of questions that you get. And the test that I might get may be radically different than the person who gets the exam next to me, the questions that they'll have. So there's randomization. Numbers of vendors and companies and certifications have gone through this process and done it. We just have to figure out the best way from a CUNY perspective to put that in place.
Judith in the back and then Heidi.
I am Judith Ullman, CIS. I'm the reporting systems manager, so I have very tangential relationship with
probably should have led with this, and I appreciate the question. I'm going to go back to the prehistoric days of CUNY Online. We had an evaluation done by CASE, the Center for Advanced Study of Education. And it's one of the things that hooked me, because among the questions that were asked about the students and the faculty, does this take more time? Yes. Do you think you learn more? Yes. Is it harder? Yes. Do you want to do it again? Yes. And that's what I thought. Anything that they say it takes more time and is harder and I want to do again, I want to be behind. Now, I think a lot of that, the sort of rumored labor intensity of this has a lot to do with doing something for the first time, learning to do something new. There's a certain level of anxiety and time investment that does go away over time. But people were really committed to this. 90% of them thought it was better than classroom teaching. That's why we were interested, that it was a better learning, better teaching, but a better learning experience. We tried to figure out why. And in sheer quantitative terms, the interaction between the student and the instructor was twice as high to 3 times as high. The interaction among the students was 3 to 5 times as high. Students were interacting with and learning from one another on an exponentially different scale than they were in face-to-face courses. You can do all kinds of things online that chew up too much class time. When you ask a question, everybody answers. It's not like this, where we're going, who's got the mic? And turn taking and all of that. It's a hugely different thing. The other thing, which is something several people have pointed out on this panel, is that once it's done, it's visible. It's visible teaching and learning. You can see how it works in a way that you can't unless you've got a video camera in the classroom and you're willing to watch all that videotape. It's amazing how this foregrounds the teaching and learning experience in a very visible, teachable way. And I think that's very important. Luke?
See, beyond it being visible, it's also sustainable and reusable. You can build on coursework that was previously completed by students in last semester's class and look forward to work that's going to be completed by next semester's class. Students write much more in online and hybrid courses. They do much more collaborative work. They do much more experiential work. Obviously, these are not absolutes, but in the courses that we've seen and we've studied throughout CUNY, students are more actively engaged in what they're doing. And the skills that they develop through navigating Blackboard, sometimes trying to navigate Blackboard, or building a WordPress site, or doing a project in Digication or in their e-portfolio platform, are directly transferable to their lives, to their careers, in ways that have actually very measurable impact. And to kind of go back to the previous question and try to move us back out to the purposes of the committee that the members of this panel are on, we're really thinking about how does CUNY build structures that make the registration more easy so that you're not swamped with questions you can't answer, that make test administration and assessment easier given the realities of our environments, and making sure that instructional designers and instructional technologists are available to help folks like you figure out how to use the range of options that are available to people who want to do ethical assessment. And so from our perspective, it's really thinking about how we put pressure on the university to make sure that the structures are available so that the best practices can emerge organically, iteratively, in response and in dialogue with what's happened before.
I'm going to give it to you in just a second. I also wanted to add to that, and that's the sense when you think about online courses or online programs, you can also think about it modularly. I mean, you can think about, I can tell you that we are creating modules so that it can be, we can work with it either it's in different courses or in different programs, or in one case, we have an on-campus program that's using a lot online for blended, and yet we're going to have a fully online program as well, so we can develop it as an 8-topic course, but if it's needed for the on-campus, then each topic will be covered over 2 weeks rather than accelerated. So you can start to think about the advantages to the design of these programs online to meet specific needs for specific students, specific audiences of students. So I just wanted to add that as well. I'm going to give the mic to our senior instructional designer, Allison Vogel.
Hi, like Judy said, I work at John Jay, and I wanted to bring up a topic I think is really important, and that would be course manageability. I think George alluded to this a little bit, and it's been brought up a little bit, and that would be the amount of work that we put into designing a course and the idea of how, and that would happen whether you were teaching a course in the present, right? If you were coming to a classroom, you would still want to be developing it and thinking about it semester to semester. You'd always constantly want to update it, refresh it. But thinking about the amount of work that goes into an online class and actually putting it into effect, it is a tremendous amount of work up front. So we're not going to take that away. But I just want to give a quick experiment to illustrate what I mean in how I try to help a faculty think about the amount of work it takes just to look at the number of discussions that can happen in a given week. If you imagine one question that you can ask, and you're not only going to ask one question in a given week, right? You're going to ask maybe 4 or 5 in a discussion, and that's only a discussion board. I don't say that I believe in only discussion boards, because there's a lot of other methods that we choose. Thinking about the fact that many faculty love discussion boards, you ask 4 or 5 questions, you have 20 students. Right there, you have 80 responses, minimum. And then you say 2, okay, everyone, I want you to respond 2 or 3. So now all of a sudden you've got 240 responses in 1 week. Is there anybody that thinks that you can think about 240 responses and give that? So,
is there anybody who thinks you have to read all of those?
Right.
Because you
And
don't.
so now we're talking about course manageability, right? So the way that I like to work with faculty and have them think about it is let's talk about how we think in groups. So then we go back to groups as not as an anathema, but as something that becomes more manageable not only to you but to the students. So we go back to the groups and we say, here's your assignment for the week. You go into your groups. Here's your 4 or 5 questions. Here's what you're going to do with those questions. And then I give them methodologies for working in groups. Here's how you discuss in groups. And give them 4 or 5 little tricks about, because you don't want to have everybody go, oh yes, that's the right answer, and then just agree with one another. So you give them principles of how to work in groups, because that's so important. And so when you come up with a consensus or not a consensus, but whatever discussions you're now, because if I said to you, let's get into groups and answer 4 questions, you're going to come up with your salient points, and then you'll bring it to the main discussion board, and then you can go into other people's groups and see how they responded. And then you have at least a wherewithal for you to go in and you can still peek into the groups, you can still look and see how they're communicating. So that's how we look at discussions these days. We don't have to go through, like in the New York Times, 600 responses to somebody talking about Donald Trump. That's still somebody wants to do that for a living, great. But that's not where, I don't think that's where we want to take our faculty anymore.
So I think the question that came up about cheating kind of speaks to one of the problems I find. I get what's in it for CUNY. I care about what's in it for the students. But my concern is how is CUNY going to do it when there are so many spaces of fractured initiatives happening where, I went and I saw a fantastic intro piece from Hostos, and I saw awesome work from John Jay, and yet we're doing a lot of things in isolation, and kind of bringing these things centrally is an incredibly huge lift. In the meantime, the slow process of administering anything at the university level and anywhere in academia is going to be it's detrimental to our students. So the fact that a person who has been teaching online for many semesters is not knowledgeable about, some of the new aspects of Blackboard, because Blackboard is constantly changing, speaks to how much training, not just the instructional designers have, which is great in helping us know about how to design online,
but the faculty have to do a lot more work. I'm not just going to be a content specialist. I have to now become a very technology savvy person who's constantly having to learn new things. And where is the central aspect of getting me that education of knowing what to do and how to do it? And the resources of one of the schools are way better than another to be able to have an entire department. And so yes, what's in it for CUNY and for the students is great. It's like democratization of education, but when are the students going to get it? How are they going to get it? And the faculty, which is so heavily adjunct and limited in their hours for daily work, how are they going to be able to execute this?
And going on with what you said, what I worry about too with the online courses is that it is such a heavy lift to change things, and it is hard for people to stay on top of every little change and innovation. And so sometimes, online courses, instead of being disruptive and innovative, online courses are like 2002. You're looking back into the past when you take an online course, and that's when I look at student feedback on courses, that's the kind of thing I see is, why is this course like this? Why are things, if there are broken links? Students don't understand that it's a single person who's responsible for having to go over the whole course and make sure everything works and make sure that things like when Google changes its interface or when Firefox upgrades, that all of a sudden things are broken. The students just look at it and think it's a broken course. And so it's very, very difficult, and that's why I'm so much looking for some kind of collaborative way to manage courses rather than leaving it up to individuals, because it's really, really a lot to keep up with.
Well, I think what you're saying about these, the frustrations of having to have each college be responsible for all these different services and supports that need to be in place, and the responsibility on the instructor. I mean, I'm always amazed at School of Professional Studies. We have faculty who voluntarily sign up for training, just large numbers. I mean, it's very surprising. They're not getting any money for it. It's just because they want to keep up, they want to learn. But on the other hand, I think that in support of not reinventing the wheel, we also need to look at places, and especially for-profit institutions who staked everything on eliminating all these pesky differences. Let's have, everything is standardized. Oddly enough, there is not enough production support in all the world to keep up with all the changes and consistency. So even if you go to a very centralized system, what you find is sometimes it becomes absolutely stultifying. The versions which are maintained are not the best versions, but they're continued to be maintained, or they're changed in such ways because those are most advantageous from an administrative point of view, from a production staff point of view, if we can talk about people producing courses. So we do have to be careful. There is some sort of intermediate path between trying to have consistency, trying to have centralized support available, resources available so that all the colleges can have some of this support and resources. But on the other hand, there is something to be said for the kinds of different solutions that are worked out at different colleges. I'm just looking here at when I'm thinking about some of the things that you've done at Baruch. Now, Baruch and other colleges, some of their missions are slightly different. Their student population may be slightly different. Their programs may be different. And I think while we don't want to constantly recreate the wheel, we also don't want to become, to stop innovation from happening. So it's tough to strike the right balance.
I want to respect people's time. We're at 2 o'clock. I do want to say that point here is that ideally, one of the things that we would be able to do and should be able to do is something much more collaborative than what we're doing now. I think that's a goal for all of us. I think it's a goal, as people have suggested to some extent, to get the students to do that, because that's a very valuable and transferable skill. When I was talking to, what's his name, Larry Johnson, just before the keynote, he said, do I need to talk about digital divide issues here? And I don't know if you know the statistics that in IR, but there is no issue when it comes to access. Access is not literacy at any level, including digital literacy. And I think one of the reasons to do this, when we keep talking about it, it sounds sometimes like we're talking about convenience on the part of the students. It's much more than that. And I think people have found different ways of saying they're doing things with technology, but are they learning? And as the people who are supposed to preside over some of the most important learning that they do, are they learning from us, and are we learning from each other? I don't want to end, and as a matter of fact, I guess a lot of people would be willing to stay, but we're at the end of our hour. Thank you very much for listening.